Oh, yeah. You must not let yourself be upset by those who put forward their or to perceive their teaching so plausibly. Stand your ground with firmness like an anvil under the hammer. The mark of a true champion is to stand up to punishment and still come off victorious.
David. Slow and loud.
It is our duty, particularly when it is in God's cause, to accept trials of all kinds. If we ourselves are to be accepted by Him, so redouble our efforts and watch out for every opportunity. But also keep your eyes on Him who has no need of opportunities, being outside all time, whom no senses can reveal, was for us made manifest, who no anchor or pain can feel, was for us by pain oppressed, willing all things to endure, our salvation to procure. That's it.
Okay, thank you. So we only have one sort of underlined sentence here. The mark of a true champion. Now here you go. We talked about the true champion. Now here's the mark of a true champion. Okay, a champion is to stand up to punishment and still come victorious. So a champion doesn't mean, in Christianity at least, it doesn't mean that I go and bash everyone up, even if I wanted to, even if I could, like David. David probably could bash quite a few people up. Yeah.
No,
But that's not a champion in Christianity, David, sorry. Okay. A champion in Christianity is Miriam, sorry, Miriam.
I think it's saying like it's not about not facing any like persecution or tribulations, but just going through that and still having God with you, and then you come out the other side.
Okay, so in Christianity, the champion is the guy who actually gets bashed, not the guy who bashes. A champion in Christianity is not the guy, it's not the guy who's the aggressor, but it's the guy who, or it's a girl. Can we stop that, please? Okay, so the champion in Christianity is the person who endures. Okay? It's not the person who inflicts, but it's the person who endures. But what happens? There's a key word here right at the end. What happens after they endure?
They're victorious.
Yeah, they're victorious. How could you be victorious if you just endured something? How could you be victorious when you're the one who's being persecuted?
Because you win heaven.
You win heaven, absolutely, absolutely. And you show your strength by your endurance. This is how Christians are. This is how we are as Christians. Number 4. Who's going to read number 4? I reckon Miriam should read number 4 because she's got the mic.
Take care that widows are not neglected next to the Lord. Be yourself their guardian. See that nothing is ever done without consulting you, and do nothing yourself without consulting God. As I am sure you never do. Take a firm stand, hold services more frequently, and hunt up everyone by name. You must not be overbearing in your manner to slaves, whether men or women, but on the other hand, never let them get above themselves. It should be their aim to be better slaves for the glory of God, so that they may earn a richer freedom at his hands, and they are not set to their hearts on gaining their liberty at the church's expense, for then they only become slaves to their own longings.
Let's go through it one at a time and we'll get to your point. Okay, so the first thing is that don't ignore the widows. One of the most important things as Christians is charity. Charity and looking after the weak and looking after the poor is the key to heaven, to be honest with you. It is a key to heaven. It's an easy key to heaven, okay? We don't ignore the poor. We don't ignore, and please, create for yourself a schedule where you pay, no matter how small amount, to charity, okay, to help the poor people, whether in Egypt or Cambodia or it doesn't really matter. But to God, that is very special, okay, and that is a key to heaven, Okay, one of the keys. Okay. Now, I like this because he says, see that nothing is done without consulting you. Who's you? Polycarp, okay, the bishop. So, as a bishop, it's his role to make sure that nothing happens in his church, in his diocese, without first being consulted. But here's the next part, which is equally important, is that it says, and do nothing. This is to Polycarp, right? So make sure that everyone in your diocese consults you, but make sure that when you're consulted, you consult God. He says here, and do nothing yourself without consulting God. So we consult the bishop or the priest, and the priest consults God. That's how the order is in the church. That's why we are an apostolic church. Now, you mentioned the slaves. So in those days, they had slaves. A slave was like an employee in our terms today, okay? And if you look at how some companies treat people today, it's pretty much slavery, okay? Slaves used to get paid, okay? But they were slaves. They were bound to their master, all right? And when I say got paid, some of them actually got paid wages. Some of them got paid the fact that they had shelter and food and, accommodation, and they had all their livelihood taken care of, okay? So that was a slave. Now, in those days as well, a slave could get their freedom by buying their way out of it, okay, in some cases. So he's saying here, and obviously some of those slaves became Christians. So suddenly you had the slave and the master of the slave going to church together because they now became Christians. They're both Christians. And so they were now the church had to deal with how does a slave and the master of the slave deal with each other in the church, okay? And this was all around the politics of that time, okay? And so what St. Paul's advice is and what St. Ignatius' advice here is, masters, you treat your slaves with dignity. Don't be harsh on them, be fair. They're slaves. They have to do their work. They have to do the washing. They have to do the cleaning. They have to do the cooking. They have to do the sleeping, all right? But you got to be honest and fair and treat them with respect. Now, some slaves, I would suppose at that time, would have taken advantage of that, and they would have tried to get their freedom through the church, okay? Or they would have tried to get benefits by being Christians. And St. Ignatius is actually warning against that. He's saying, don't give benefits or freedom to slaves just because they became a Christian. Otherwise, they will become a Christian, not because they want to become a Christian, but because they want the benefits, okay? So that's just, in principle, it teaches us that being a Christian or attracting people to Christ or attracting people to church should not involve monetary or material benefits. You don't give benefits to people so that they become Christians. Otherwise, they'll become Christians for the benefits, not for Christianity. That's all that it's saying. But he's not encouraging slavery. And slavery eventually died out, over the years.
Are we not called to be slaves to God? Like, I'm pretty sure
Yeah, that's different. That's different.
Because, like, Debbie, for example, when we had, Debbie come in,
Yeah.
there's an element that, we're always slaves to something.
Yeah.
And it's far better to be slaves to God and slaves for good than to be slaves to evil. Like, we're slaves to our addiction, we're slaves to our vices.
So we are slaves to God by our will. They were slaves against their will. Does that make a difference? Yeah. Okay, so we give our lives to God, okay? And as St. John said, we love him because he first loves us. So our slavery to God is a slavery of love. It's a commitment of love. because he loved us, we love him. And it's not one of resentment. It's not one that we go, oh God, I've got to go to church. I've got to pray. Oh, that's not our relationship with God. Okay, we want to be. Can I just draw you to number 7? The second line. This is Saint Ignatius is looking for somebody to be a messenger between Syria and where Saint Polycarp lived. And he's saying God's going to bless that person. And he's saying, by the way,
A Christian, after all, is not his own master. He puts his time at God's disposal. This is one of God's good works.
okay, does that sort of answer the question? So a Christian is not his own master, okay? And what does this remind us of? What does this remind us of? A Christian is not his own master. What happened when the master left? He had 3 servants. He gave one talent, another one 2 talents, another one 5 talents. 5 talents, okay? So the talents, or the money, or the time, this talents is time, actually. It doesn't belong to the servant, it belongs to the master, okay? And we, as we've been entrusted with these talents to use those talents. So your time is actually a gift from God, and it belongs to God. And how you use it will then determine whether you get eternal life as a reward at the end, or God takes it back, okay? So Saint Ignatius is stressing here that a Christian is not his own master. God is his master. Okay? And it's a good point, what Debbie said. Debbie said everyone is enslaved to something. Yeah. So if we are enslaved to God, then God's our master. That means we're doing God's work. We're doing God's will.